Some years ago, I dropped by this pizza place, and the owner and I got to talking.
He wasn't Italian, which was fine. If you're from Brooklyn, you don't have to be Italian to make good pizza. School children know how to make good pizza. DMV employees can make it when pressed.
Well, yeah, I suppose so.
He asked me what kind of car I drove. At that moment, I didn't have a car, mostly because I didn't need one, and this completely stunned him. He asked me how I got around. Now, this in turn surprised me. I pointed out to him that there was a perfectly serviceable subway station literally next door to his pizza parlor. The New York subway system works around the clock. Weekends, holidays, Christmas, you name it. There are also buses, and if push comes to shove, you can summon a cab. If you don't need to travel anywhere outside the five boroughs, owning a car is in fact an unnecessary expense in many cases. If you're hell-bent on driving out to the countryside on the weekend, you can always rent something. Anyway, it got me thinking, so I conducted an experiment. This was back when legacy TV was still a thing, and prime time was a term that actually meant something. Good riddance, if you ask me. I armed myself with a notebook and spent some time sitting in front of the TV, counting car commercials, the ones that try to get you to buy a car, because everyone must have a car. So I did some math, and the results astonished me. An average American citizen buys a new car every 4 years, give or take. I multiplied the number of car commercials by the number of days and arrived at a staggering figure. It turned out that an average American was force-fed 55,000 car ads between purchases. No other product in history has ever been advertised with this kind of unbridled aggression. That's an understatement. I mean, nothing comes even close, like toothpaste, jeans, drugs, detergent, movie trailers, investment banking. Nothing, not by a long shot. 55,000 ads. That's not advertising, that's hypnosis. You must buy a car. It's your civic duty to buy a car. When I snap my fingers, you'll go and buy a car. Now, let's jump into our portable time machine and go back to the 1920s, just over a century ago. It is said that back then, 90% of all passenger travel in the United States was conducted by streetcar. I can see why. Streetcars are friendly, streetcar lines don't ruin the landscape, they don't destroy the neighborhood vibe. I dare say that with the technologies available at that time and those available today, if instead of going car-centric we had stayed streetcar-centric, American cities would look a lot more attractive today. Many small towns would have been preserved. You know, Main Street, the church, the general store, the saloon, the bank, the sheriff's office. Instead, this is what they all look like today. Yeah, this is the new American small town. Not to mention that we wouldn't be wasting millions upon millions of barrels of oil on a daily basis. Those who say that about 60% of all oil in this country is burned in private cars' engines forget to include the car-centric infrastructure. The million-dollar question is, yes, you're right, who is Robert Moses? Let's get this out of the way first. I don't think Robert Moses was evil, nor do I think that he alone is to blame for what happened in this country and, to some extent, in the rest of the civilized world. He was a brilliant organizer. He was highly energetic. He had a vision, however misguided. He wasn't aware of the inherent flaws in his plan. He thought it was solid. Good plan, good plan. He wasn't greedy. I mean, seriously, avarice played no part in what he, accomplished, for lack of a better word. The mess he left behind is not the result of his greed. He was a Yale graduate. There were also Oxford, I think, and Columbia University on his resume. He was assertive, authoritative, ambitious, implacable, and yet he had friends. So he must have been charming or charismatic as well. He was married twice, he had kids, so like a normal guy. At some point, he converted to Christianity. Well, converted may be the wrong word here. Like, okay, he was born Jewish. There is no record of him actually practicing Judaism. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. So, his baptism, was it sincere or just a career move? I don't know. He came from an upper middle class family and was comfortable financially throughout his life. Personal wealth was never his goal. If you told him that he used his administrative power to, I don't know, to line his own pockets, he wouldn't have been insulted, just surprised, like what? Are you serious? He was largely indifferent, even disdainful towards displays of wealth or luxury. He was not a socialite. He didn't care for fashionable circles and wasn't known for indulging in like fine clothes, cars, villas, or art. His vision was, well, you could call it futuristic. He pictured this well-paved, endless highway from horizon to horizon, and private cars zooming up and down this highway driven by overjoyed car owners. This was to him the future, technologically advanced, sterile looking, and, in Robert's view, beautiful. So the man had no taste, huh? Well, I hasten to add this channel didn't exist back then, so there was nothing to set him straight about certain things. So he just plowed forward, and anything that stood in his way, he regarded as old-fashioned, superfluous, and ripe to be demolished. Beginning with, and this is important, rail tracks. He loathed rail tracks. I mean, trains, streetcars, the mere sight of them drove him mad. Do you know who else hated rail tracks? And still does? Well, car manufacturers, naturally, for obvious reasons. The one company that's always mentioned as Robert's co-conspirator is General Motors. Ford, amazingly enough, stayed out of the campaigns, even though I'm pretty sure he was sympathetic. Well, there are only so many cars you can sell to the wealthy, only so many places you can reach by car in a country where 90% of passenger travel is executed by rail transport. Roads were generally anything but car friendly. I mean, dusty, unpaved, prone to flooding, and full of mud in the rainy season. This had to change. But in order to change it, all those hateful rail tracks had to be removed, and all those stupid streetcars scrapped. Yes? Okay, why? Other co-conspirators were, of course, Goodyear, some other rubber manufacturers, including Michelin. Yeah, that Michelin. Tires and restaurant reviews. There were others, other hotshots with vested interests, especially politicians who figured they deserved more than just an elected official's salary.
What is this? It's insulting.
And so, with Robert's blessings, car manufacturers purchased streetcar companies, tracks, rolling stock and all, promising to modernize them, following which the rolling stock would be dispatched to the junkyard and the tracks ripped out mercilessly all across the Republic. For the greater good, yes. Look, it is said that in the year of our Lord 1920, with the exception of a 40-mile stretch somewhere in upstate New York, you could board a streetcar up in Maine, and traveling and switching from one streetcar to the next, you would be able to reach Detroit. Wow. All that had to go. It wasn't modern enough for Robert Moses, and GM was happy to be rid of that kind of competition. Whatever you may think of our 32nd president and his policies, the fellow did have good taste. And, curiously enough, he was a New Yorker, a Brooklynite, no less. That's right. Spent much of his childhood and adolescence walking up and down, Henry Street in Brooklyn Heights. When he heard of Robert Moses' plan to demolish, all Moses' plans started with the demolition of something historical, to demolish portions of Washington Square Park, along with some other sections of Greenwich Village and Battery Park, to make way for the construction of a Brooklyn Battery Bridge. He balked. This was before the government started the practice of landmarking buildings, so the president couldn't just go ahead and landmark every damn park, house, church, synagogue, and municipal building that Moses was planning to take down. There had to be some other way. Here's something funny. Never in his life did Robert Moses figure as an elected official. Not once. He was always appointed. He was president of this and that, chairman, commissioner, etc. He tried running for governor once, didn't end well, partly because of that, him being appointed rather than elected. He was paradoxically very difficult to control. Anyway, the president, FDR, devised a plan. It was as brilliant as it was humorous. Again, whatever you may think of FDR, he did have a great sense of humor. He sent the Navy. I am not kidding. He asked them to find an excuse, however idiotic, to keep Moses from constructing the f***ing bridge. The Navy saluted the commander-in-chief, boarded a harbor vessel, and sailed up and down the Narrows, the Hudson, and the East River. They took in the sights, had coffee under the Brooklyn Bridge, played a few card games, smoked a few cigars, and put together a report. According to this report, I'm pretty sure they had a lot of fun putting it together. According to this report, if a bridge connecting the tip of Manhattan with Red Hook was damaged by enemy bombing, it would block access to the East River for Navy ships, which was unacceptable from the military point of view. It sounded like a joke. It allowed the president to say to Robert Moses, "I'm sorry, I wish I could help you, but you know, those Navy guys." Moses was furious, of course. Well, later on, when Roosevelt's successors, Truman and Eisenhower, turned out to be of the same mind as the celebrated Brooklynite, he constructed a tunnel instead. And later on, to save face, he claimed that that had been his plan all along. Suppose that one day you decide to become a big-time entrepreneur. You're going to make, I don't know, electric shavers. Make electric shavers and sell them. Do you use an electric shaver? I do. I think they're great. So you approach the government and ask them to allocate some land for you. If folks living on that land get displaced, hey, shit happens. You know, eminent domain at work. Further on, the government will build you a factory, provide all the necessary equipment, and then build you a store and recruit some workers and vendors. Yes, that is your business plan. You'll be in charge, you'll keep all the profits, but the government will provide everything else, at the expense of the taxpayer, of course. Sounds absurd, doesn't it? Last year, the government, federal, state, and local, spent $250 billion, $250 billion on roads. That's maintenance, new construction, administration and research, plus law enforcement and safety, and debt service. You see, car manufacturers don't build their own roads, nor do they maintain them. That's quite a business model. Why is everyone so obsessed with cars? I get out of my building on Saturday morning, like 11 a.m., on my purely residential block. No shops, no cafes, and there's a traffic jam. 11 a.m. on a Saturday. Where are those people going? Why aren't they sleeping with their wives or girlfriends? Why aren't they like having leisurely breakfast, enjoying each other's company, or feeding and entertaining their kids? Why can't they read a damn book or watch a TV show? What makes them get into their jalopies and drive on a Saturday, no less? You know, Sweden is rumored to have the best public transportation system in the world. No, really, it is state of the art. Wherever you are in Sweden, town, countryside, it's all the same. Getting from point A to point B by streetcar, train, or bus is in fact a joyful experience. Their public transport is highly comfortable and amazingly efficient. And yet, they have traffic jams. Traffic jams in Sweden. Why? Again, that jalopy of yours. What's the appeal? How did Robert Moses, GM, and Goodyear, to name just three of the perpetrators, manage to seduce almost the entire population of these United States and the rest of the world into this jalopy-centric culture? I can think of a number of reasons. The most important one, status or prestige, whatever. The elegant French phrase would be voiture particulière. Sounds musical, doesn't it? Voiture particulière. It goes back many centuries. And only the upper class, like the nobility, the aristocracy, could afford to keep this voiture particulière. A personal carriage along with a pair of horses and a driver. At the end of the 19th century, this segued into, well, no, it didn't. It stayed the same, except the horses were replaced by the internal combustion engine. Do you want to feel important? Upper class? A person of merit? Lordly? Get a car. Folks of good repute don't drive themselves. They have chauffeurs, but that's a minor detail, I suppose. Reason number two, the mobile citadel illusion. Going faster than a human or a horse creates a sense of detachment from external dangers. You have your own mobile citadel. Others are exposed to all kinds of danger. You are not. Then there's the machinery mastery thrill. Look at this big thing, and I control it. And it does exactly what I tell it to do. I know it's childish, but there it is. There are other reasons, just as silly and impractical, especially in big cities. So before we start blaming Robert Moses, GM, and Michelin or Goodyear, why not look in the mirror? Coney Island was an actual barrier island just south of Brooklyn. At the turn of the 20th century, it featured excellent beaches, as it does today. Some pretty impressive hotels, a huge and famous amusement park mentioned in classic American literature, notably by O. Henry, and was connected to Brooklyn by a whole bunch of bridges with walkways and streetcar lines. Now, Robert Moses was in the process of improving car access to various points of the five boroughs. He had the Triborough Bridge built, no trains and no pedestrians, cars only, and then he turned his sights on Brooklyn. The Verrazano Narrows Bridge was his next project. No train tracks, no pedestrians, cars only. And the Belt Parkway, the perpetually jammed highway skirting the southern part of Brooklyn. Construction commenced. They dug up a lot of soil in the process. They needed those holes for like bridge supports and highway supports and whatnot. By the way, don't hold me to it. I'm just telling a story. I may be wrong about some of the facts. I'm just giving you like a general impression. Anyway, all that soil and rock. They called up a meeting and to decide what to do with it. Someone proposed erecting an artificial hill with a serpentine road going up to the summit, with residential buildings along this road, with a church on top and an opera theater at the foot. Then Robert Moses got up and said, this is a great idea, but I have a better one. Let's dump it all in the creek. And so they did. They ripped out the streetcar lines, took down the bridges, and filled Coney Island Creek, effectively making good old Coney a peninsula rather than an island. The subway lines running across that artificial tombolo were probably put in against Robert's wishes. Well, you can't have everything. Somehow it turned folks away, and the world-famous amusement park became a dump and continued to be a dump for a long time. There's been some improvements lately, not very impressive. It's Friday night and you want to have a good time. The nearest bar is 5 miles away. The movie theater is also 5 miles away, likely in a different direction. So there's your bar or restaurant that serves wine and liquor, good wine and good liquor, mind you. And if you're out to have a good time, wine is a must. It's okay, it's good for you in moderation. It's in the Bible. The Savior himself likes a cup of wine now and then. You discover there is a parking lot next to the bar or restaurant, and it's packed with cars. Driving while intoxicated is against the law, and rightly so. Do you see the hypocrisy? This car-centric culture has given us Suburbia. Soulless, faceless, depressing, and largely unsustainable. As James Howard Kunstler once put it, the greatest misallocation of resources in history. The destruction of the American small town to make room for all those subdivisions was a terrible blow to culture, tradition, neighborly relations, neighborhood life. Everyone knows it sucks. No one knows what to do with it anymore. Thank you, Robert. With the exception of New York City, the state of public transport in the Republic, oh boy, we're the laughingstock of the civilized world. Europe is way ahead, and so is Japan. China, of all places, is better off in that department. You know, driving is supposed to be a joyful experience if you do it in moderation. But you get behind the wheel, you start driving, and suddenly there's this traffic jam. It's like the entire country is an amusement park with only one ride, and that ride is malfunctioning. You want to know something funny? Robert Moses died at the age of 92. In all his eventful life, he never learned to drive. Didn't even have a driver's license. Cheers.